It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk, joined by my cohort here, Paul Dottino. The phone number for you, and we'll take your calls throughout a lot of this show, is 201-939-4513. Yesterday, we went through our defensive predictions from last year, and we saw how terrible they are. Well, if you thought that was fun, just you wait till we look at the offensive predictions. Even worse, just an absolute disaster. I was actually pretty happy. I think we actually hit our over and under numbers for the defense last year pretty well.
You know what?
They were all in the neighborhood.
After we went through them, it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Especially the over-under with like the yards and points allowed and the sacks for the players. I think we actually did, again, I'm not trying to pat myself in the back. I think we actually picked pretty realistic numbers from last year, Paul, and I think we did a pretty good job with those.
Yeah. This will not be the case today.
Offense is going to be ugly. And a lot of that has to do with injuries, too, right? Guys miss games. Remember, we do those over-unders based on a guy playing a 17-game season.
Sure.
So that's going to hurt a lot of it. So we'll motor through a lot of it, and then we'll get to your calls early and often at 201-939-4513. Rookie minicamp, of course, begins on Friday.
Yes, sir.
We'll get the players in. They have about an hour and 15-minute, hour and a half practice, right? Mm-hmm. Again, folks, when we're not going to get like Malik Neighbors catching passes with coverage on them. It's just not going to be what we're going to have. But we will hear from Brian Dable. We'll hear from the rookies at the podium after the first couple practices. So we'll have all that covered.
That's tomorrow,
for you right
actually.
Here. I said that tomorrow.
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah. Today's Thursday.
Yeah. By the way, tomorrow's show, we should bring that up.
Yeah.
Since we have Brian Dable at 11:30, practice at 12:15.
Yes.
And I think media at like 1:15.
Yep.
We pushed BBK tomorrow to 2 o'clock. We just want to be able to talk about what we saw at rookie minicamp. We want to be able to talk about what Brian Dable says, what the rookies say. So we thought it made sense to push it to 2 o'clock. So we'll be a little bit later tomorrow. So adjust your calendars, adjust your schedule, your alarms, your notifications, whatever you got. We'll be a little bit later tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So does my voice sound normal?
Well, see,
by the way,
John, second quarter last night, I'm thinking the whole world has come to an end because Brunson's hurt, and I'm thinking of you at the game because I knew you were going, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is about the time where John smashes his head against the seat in front of him and has a concussion and is a bloody mess and probably won't be into work tomorrow.
It was more of this, and for those of you watching on YouTube or Giants.com, it was basically me sitting here like this for a quarter. Actually, I should take it back because my fingers were a little spread. I was more like this, so I could actually see the game as I had my head in my hands. Because at that point, you knew we went back into the locker room. It took forever for them to even announce what the injury was.
Don't feel bad. TNT wasn't telling us either.
No one had it. And, the Knicks were lucky. We have some really good beat reporters. Fred Katz is great. Ian Bentley is great. And they get the news out there very quickly.
Yes.
They had nothing. And Brunson routinely gets banged around. He goes into the locker room. He comes back out. And when you get like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're like, oh boy. Then you hear it's a foot injury. And you're like, those stress fractures on foot injuries can happen really easily. Those Jones fractures on the side of your feet.
The hot spots.
Which, by the way, is really bad for basketball players.
Oh, yeah.
That can carry into multiple seasons.
Especially him, because it's his footwork that allows him to do what he does.
Start, stop, change direction. There's a lot of pressure on his feet, on the outside part of the feet. So I'm sitting there, and you don't just think the game's over. You think the season's over.
Yes.
So you feel like garbage. So I met my buddy there, and he told me he wanted to get a Brunson jersey that day. But he got there too late to get it before the game. So we get to halftime. I look up. I go, do you still want to do this? He goes, yeah, I still want to do it. So I go, all right, I'll go with you because I'm a season ticket holder. So I get like special discounts at the stand. So
good.
I wanted to help him out with the discount, right?
Yeah.
So we go. We get the Brunson jersey. He puts it on. We go back to our seats. We sit down. I'm scrolling through my phone looking for updates. I'm just trying to find out anything I can. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you hear like this. And I'm like, look up. And there you see Brunson walking out of the little tunnel onto the court. And you saw my post last night. I had the picture and video on my phone of him warming up at halftime. And, there's not many people in the seats at halftime of these games. That's the one time they have to go use the bathroom, go to the concession stands. But you could feel the energy building. And then once they started playing in the third quarter, they started rolling. You're like, they're not losing this game. And just all of the momentum and I tweeted this last night. Like Jalen, and just the way he plays and his approach, his mentality, his toughness, he epitomizes everything you want out of a New York athlete. Playing through pain, humble but serious, businesslike, big in big moments. Very Eli-ish, to be totally honest with you, with the way he handles himself and goes about his business. Maybe not as goofy, though he has some goofiness, Brunson, too, with the way he interacts with Josh Hart on the podcast and stuff like that. So it's just every way you want a player, he epitomizes what New York wants out of their athletes. And it was just from feeling great after maybe the best first quarter they've had of the whole playoffs, the thinking the season's over in the second quarter. Then you feel great. Brunson comes back. Then Anunoby hurts his hamstring. You feel bad again.
Oh.
Then they close the game really well. You feel great again. I was exhausted after that game. My gosh. Whew. But it was a lot of fun.
John, I've said for the last month, Joker is the player of the year. Brunson's got to be the MVP. You take Brunson off the Knicks, they're not anywhere near what they are right now.
I was happy to see that he finished fifth in MVP voting. Hopefully that'll get him on the first team All-NBA.
I would hope so. And still he doesn't get on Team USA. The highest finishing American in the MVP balloting, and they leave him off Team USA.
It's probably better off for the Knicks.
I think so because of what the beating he's taken. Yeah.
So
I'm okay with that.
I honestly don't have an issue with it. Let him rest and recover. So
I would like to have them invite him and then him turn it down.
All right.
That just to be able to get the respect.
Got it. All right. Let's get to the Giants here.
Celtic fan over here, Pearson, doesn't even want to hear about this.
Oh,
because
Pearson's feeling good, man.
Yeah,
He's also going to have a dilapidated Knick team. Well,
I know.
Might have a dilapidated Knick team or a Pacer team that plays no defense in the Eastern Conference Finals. So
we also have Porzingis out, so I'm just saying both sides could be a little injured there.
Knicks are down 4 rotation pieces, dude. It's including their second best player.
This is the most shorthanded NBA team I have ever seen to achieve what the Knicks have achieved this year. It is truly remarkable.
And Rick Carlisle, how about you worry less about the officials and more about your team giving up 130 points to a team that has like 5 healthy players,
right?
All right?
Is that unbelievable?
Relax. And I get him being mad after game 1 with the calls at the end. I understood that. I didn't get last night.
No.
Relax.
No.
All right, here we go.
Hey, we got Giants news, too.
Yes. Oh, yeah, the Giants. We should talk about the news before we do our
Yes, please.
Allen Robinson.
Absolutely.
Gets brought into Big Blue here. Big-bodied receiver, 6'3" or 6'2.5".
Skyscraper, folks.
220 pounds. Not just tall, thick.
He's a
big, powerful guy.
Big, strong frame.
I imagine, and one of our fans tweeted this to me earlier today, he'll be competing in that Isaiah Hodgins, Bryce Ford Wheaton column of the receiver depth chart as to have that, that kind of one big-bodied guy you want in your group.
He's a contested catch guy. He blocks for the run. In recent times with the Steelers, played a lot of slot as the big slot guy for them last year.
He's lost some speed from when he was a 1,000-yard guy.
There's no doubt. 3-time 1,000-yard guy. Last time, 5 years ago with the Bears, if this had happened 5 years ago, his price would have been significantly higher.
The year the Giants signed Kenny Golladay, they were considering, he was an option to give a lot of money to that offseason
even though he was a year off his 1,000 at that point. Still, at that point, he was still a prime player. Now he's in the league 10 years. I don't know exactly what he's got left, but I can tell you, very highly respected veteran who does all the dirty work, who understands and knows the game. He's a role player now. He obviously gets it because he spent 2 years ago with the Rams and then last year with Pittsburgh. So he's kind of a vagabond at this point, just trying to find an opportunity to win some games.
He did some media stuff for SiriusXM at the Combine.
I did not know that.
Yeah, doing some stuff with the wide receivers and scouting receivers for them. So I thought maybe he might retire and go into media. He's made a good amount of money in his career, but he wants to give it another go, and he'll have a chance. I don't think it's a guaranteed roster spot.
I don't think so either.
I think that's a compete with the rest of the guys type of situation.
Why not?
Which is great.
It's only May. You could do that now. If you're doing that in September, it's like, oh, really? How much does he have left? And do we know we're really wasting our time or we're going to get something? But when you do it in May, there's no harm, no foul here. And even Nathan Rourke, the quarterback they picked up, the former CFL quarterback.
The waiver claim, yep.
All right. Now, even him, okay, this is a guy who, in 3 years at Ohio, in each of those years, he's a running quarterback, okay? He's a thick, sturdy, running quarterback. had rushed for over 800 yards and a minimum of 13 touchdowns in each of his 3 years at Ohio. In each of those years, they went to a bowl game, and they won their bowl game. In those 3 bowl games, he combined for 3 touchdown passes, 3 rushing touchdowns, and only 1 interception. So he's a smart kid. He's a Canadian native, was up in Canada for a couple of years, did some nice things up there, and now he's trying to come back to the States and see if he can make it here.
A guy like that, Paul, it smells really good scout team quarterback when you're facing these mobile quarterbacks and let him play the role. Like when the Giants play the Ravens this year, have him be Lamar Jackson in practice, and that'll maybe give you a little bit of an advantage.
At the very least, he's somebody they can work with during the offseason. If he shows enough, then maybe you try to put him on the practice squad and use him as a practice player.
He'd be a practice squad guy.
If he doesn't, then he doesn't. And again, no harm, no foul. But a very interesting player. In fact, his nickname is Air Canada. Okay, fine. He runs the ball a lot, and they call him Air Canada. You figure that one out.
All right, let's go to over-unders here, Paul, very quickly. Daniel Jones, we added 67.5% completions, 3,500 passing yards, 29.5 total touchdowns. That's rushing and passing together.
Yeah.
And then 650 rushing yards. Obviously, all those were under because of the injuries.
Indeed.
He didn't play it, and the poor play from him and the teammates around him in the first 5-6 games of the year. So I don't think we need to belabor that point all that much. And frankly, I'm going to leave this here, Pearson, just because I think might use these exact same numbers again this year for him. I mean, I think those are reasonable numbers for this year, right?
Why not?
So I'm going to leave Daniel here, actually. It's a good idea. So I will leave them there, and we'll see where we go with that. I already raised defense yesterday. I probably shouldn't have done that. Saquon Barkley. And I should actually do you have the Giant stats in front of you for this past year?
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it up here, too. I did not do that before the show started. We kind of got in here at the last second. But Saquon Barkley last year, obviously, he missed 3 games due to injury.
Mm-hmm.
So that hurt a lot of his final numbers for the year. But for over-unders for him last year, we had 1,300 rushing yards. All of us had under on that, Paul, except for you. 55 receptions for the year. He finished with, I think we just missed that one, 41.
Yep.
If he played all the games, that would have been closer. I probably went a little high on that one. All of us were under on the 55 receptions, by the way.
Yeah.
So we all got that right. And then 10.5 total touchdowns receiving and rushing together, and he finished with 10. Ooh, just missed that. I got it right on the button. He finished with 10 touchdowns. We had him over under at 10.5. Me and you were over on that, Paul. And Lance and Howard, it looks like, were under on that. So me and you just missed it, and they just got that one correct.
Yeah, the 3 games that he missed really cost him and would have swayed it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On the touchdowns, the rushing yards and receptions, he might, even with the 3 games back, he might not have went over on those.
Yeah.
But on the touchdowns,
Possibly.
you would assume he would have went over.
Yeah.
All right. Darren Waller. Obviously, all the injuries. We had him at 74.5 receptions, 1,000 yards, 7.5 touchdowns. Obviously, all those were unders, again, because of the injuries. This is going to be an interesting conversation. Again, we don't know if Waller's back yet this year, so
Still don't know.
I don't know, and frankly, I'm going to bring all those numbers down based on what he did last year anyway. So
Might as
I'm
well.
erasing that. This is a lesson of not taking too much out of potential and what we see in the summer and looking at a larger NFL track record before you start putting over-unders on guys.
Okay.
Paris Campbell.
Oh.
And this is a lesson learned. And
It
we all
is.
should have had this lesson learned already, but it was another hard one.
Yeah.
We had him at 63.5 receptions, 625 yards, 3.5 touchdowns. He did not score a touchdown last year, from as far as I can tell.
Had only 27 targets for the whole season.
Yeah. 20 catches for 104 yards. Like I said, this was going to be ugly.
Yeah.
And it is ugly. And then finally, Lance and I, you and Howard did not do it, but we did Isaiah Hodgins. We had him at 64.5 receptions, 750 yards. I had him under across the board, so I'm happy to take the W on that. Lance had him over on the touchdowns at 5.5. I had him under on that as well. So, all right, now team offensive statistics. This is where I think we have a chance to be a little bit more not terrible, though the overall performance and the injuries is certainly going to take a hit with this as well in terms of how the season went. So let's go through these very quickly. I'll bring up the team rankings here for the year. So we're going to start off with total offense. We had him at 350 yards per game total offense. The Giants finished at, let's see, where do the Giants come in here in yards per game offensively? Oh, I hate when people make the default the playoffs and not the regular season. Like, guys, I don't care about the playoffs.
Right.
Show me the regular season stats, please. Only 280.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, we did not expect the injury to the quarterback, which had a big factor on that. So, needless to say, that came down as an under. All of us were over on that except for Lance. He was under. Points per game, 23.9. This is another going to be a big-time under, which I still think is a realistic number based on where they were the year before.
Mm-hmm.
15.6. So, obviously, that was under across the board. I was under with Lance and that. You and Howard were over. And then, oh, boy, sacks allowed.
Oh, God.
We put the over-under at 40. We doubled that, folks. We were at 82, right? Was it 82 the final number? 89, whatever it was? Oh, boy.
You know, and let me just say this.
Like I said, it was going to be ugly, folks. And, boy, it was ugly.
After what happened last year, the number was 85. To be frank with you, if they can get it down to 40, that would be a Herculean effort. After having 85 last season.
Actually, and that brings us, I'm happy you brought that up,
The
Paul.
chart that the guy sent us was really cool.
Let me bring that up here. I'll try and find it. But one of our great listeners sent in a chart here about how much certain teams improved in terms of sacks allowed from year to year. And let me see if I can bring that up. I have all my mentions from last night's game.
He sent it to me, too. I have it. I'm pretty sure it's...
Here we go. I got it.
Okay, good.
So, top 10 biggest improvements is year-over-year sacks allowed since 2000, okay? So, you had the 2002 Lions drop by 46. The Texans in that terrible year in 2003 dropped by 40. The Colts dropped by 38 in 2018. The Panthers dropped by 37 in 2001. 2007, the Browns dropped by 35. 2005, 35 for the Bears. So, those are big numbers. The Cowboys dropped 33 year-over-year sacks allowed from 19 to 20. The Raiders dropped from 31 in 2007, and the Commanders dropped by 31 in 2015. So the Giants would have to drop from 85 sacks allowed to 38 sacks to beat that year-over-year improvement that the Lions set the record in 2002. And again, that's probably asking a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's
Another not-so-fun
huge
fact from him. In 23, the Giants allowed 85 sacks, the most in the season since 2000. The next most, the 02 Texans with 76. 02 was their first year as an NFL franchise, and that was the year that basically ruined David Carr.
Yes.
He just got obliterated all year.
Yes. The interesting part about this sack list that he put together is that
DeAndre Hayton, by the way, is the Twitter username. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I messaged
great
you
job.
back. Love the homework. Interesting of this list, John, that has the, was it top 9, top 10? 3 of them are NFC East. Philly, Dallas, and Washington.
Yeah, most of them are further away, too. I think only 3 or 4 of those, right, are in the last 6 or 7 years. Yeah, all but 4.
Philly in 21, and that's really the only close one.
No, 19, 21, and 18. That's it.
That's
Everything
somewhat
else
close.
is 2015 and earlier, which is almost 10 seasons ago.
Yeah.
So, we've seen, and here's why I think it's possible you could be involved in this group. It's that it's almost a complete revamp, right? Andrew Thomas, you were missing for half a year last year. He's back.
Mm-hmm.
John Michael Schmitz, you hope is going to be a lot better. Both your starting guards could be different.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Neal missed half the year last year. You hope he could make a big jump as a rookie. So you do have an opportunity for improvements at every single one of those offensive line spots.
Except for Thomas.
Well, the improvement for him, though, is he's going to be there for all 17 games.
That would be the improvement. Right.
Right. I
His
don't mean
level
improvement
of
as a
play.
player.
He played really well.
No, but you missed him for half the year.
Yeah.
And how many sacks? I mean, Josh Azuda gave up like 6 sacks in one game.
You're talking about the 5 slots. All 5 slots should improve.
Correct. Just because of injury.
Absolutely.
Younger guys getting better or new personnel.
Yeah.
And that's why I think
That's the goal.
if it works out, there's a chance. I don't know if you get into the 40s here, but even if you can get it down to 50, even if you just give up 50 sacks next year.
Don't tell Coach that.
I know, but that's just under 3 a game.
I know.
If you told me the Giants would allow fewer than 3 sacks per game next year, Paul, wouldn't you sign up for that right now?
I guess you'd have to because of the desperation. The situation is really ugly, so you'd have to. But, I think if you talk to any coach going into a season, they'd tell you they'd like to have that number under 30, to be honest.
Oh, well, I mean, I think in today's day and age, that's asking a lot, though.
It is asking a lot, but that's the ultimate goal. I always say this. You want your offensive line to be functional. Well, that's the bar. That's the minimum. Get them to be functional so that you can use every chapter of your playbook. Anything above that is now gravy. It's like a pass-fail course in college. You either pass or you fail. There's no extra roses given for being a super line. It just, hey, you're a super line. Fine. The point is you passed. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is this. You're the Giants. Right now, you failed as an offensive line.
Oh, that's a big F.
Okay? So now you just want to pass.
Get to C.
You want to get to functional.
So we'll talk about
anything beyond that is gravy.
I'm going to
save
the fan bold predictions for another show because we're already at 50 here, and I want to dig deeper into this conversation.
Yeah.
So last year, the Bengals allowed 50 sacks. All right? I think this is, make sure I'm looking at offense. Here I am. Okay. They were the 8th worst team in the league. So if you get under 50, you're getting out of that bottom quartile, which is nice. I'd like to get out of the bottom third if I could.
Absolutely.
But you know what? Even if you're just out of the bottom quartile, at least that's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Texans, for example, they allowed 47 sacks last year. They had a great offense.
Yeah.
The Vikings allowed 47 sacks last year. They had a really good offense. So
explosive plays make the difference. You can have all those sacks if you're making big plays.
That's good enough, right? Is it ideal? No. But it's competent.
Yeah.
It allows you to be functional.
Get it into the 40s, and you can absolutely do some things.
Right. So, again, if you get below 50, you can be functional. You get out of that bottom quartile. But if you're living in that bottom 8, folks, and I'm going to... The Giants, the Panthers, the Commanders, the Titans, the Jets, the Broncos, the Bears, the Bengals. 8 of, and again, though, the Bengals are in there because Joe Burrow missed a lot of the year and Jake Browning took a lot of sacks.
Right.
And then the team after that with 48 are the Patriots. You're looking at 9 of the worst offensive teams in football. Did any of those teams, the Bengals almost did, but none of those other teams even came close.
No.
In fact, go down the list. Jets picked 10th. Broncos picked 12th. Bears picked 9th. Titans picked 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Commanders picked 3rd. Patriots picked 2nd.
I knew where you were going.
Picked 1st. Giants. It's all the teams that picked in the top 10 of the draft.
Yes.
Now, part of this is those teams are trailing a lot. They have to throw in the second half. Opportunities for more sacks. So that's part of it. It's a game flow situation. But if you can get out of that bottom quartile and allow fewer than 50, I'm not setting that high of a bar here, folks.
No.
I'm not. And look, and you said, most coaches would be under 30. Guess how many teams finished with 30? I was going to say under 30 sacks last year. Don't look it up. You're guessing.
No, I'm not. I'm looking at something different.
Yes.
Go ahead.
How many teams do you think allowed fewer than 30 sacks last year?
5?
2.
Was it only 2?
The Bills allowed 24.
Okay.
Josh Allen's a freak show.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs allowed 28 because Patrick Mahomes is a freak show. And they're both those guys are maybe the best at avoiding sacks in the league. All right? Packers allowed 30. Lions and Dolphins allowed 31. Rams, 49ers, 34. And then you're getting into the bigger area.
Okay, now to further your point.
Like, just an example, Philly allowed 39 last year. Dallas allowed 40. And those are both double-digit win teams.
Right. And to further along with that point, the Giants gave up 49 sacks in their playoff season 2 years ago. And they won 9 games.
Functional.
They were absolutely
it wasn't
functional.
Good, but it was functional.
It was functional. And 2 of those sacks were to a gadget play with Lawrence Cager and J.B. Gillen got caught trying to deal with a bad punt that he wound up getting sacked on.
Yeah.
So 47 sacks against the Giants in their 2022 playoff season, during which they won 9 games.
Again, you want it to be better.
That's it.
You want it to be better than that, but you're out of this offense can't function, which is what and by the way, I think the last 5 or 6 games of the year last year, the Giants' offensive line became good enough where they were able to function.
Yeah, well,
in most of December, they were able to function because Andrew Thomas came back, John Michael Schmitz came back, and you actually had the same 5 lining up for 6 or 7 straight weeks, 5 or 6 straight weeks. So they got there by the end of the year, but that's why their first 11 games were just such an unmitigated disaster.
I've been setting the bar with the word functional for so many years and talking about an O-line, but I think a better term now is you want to get to the functional 40s. I think that's the good term. The functional 40s, based on the dominant sack numbers that we see in today's game because there are so many passes thrown. It is a pass-happy league. So, yeah, I think the functional 40s is going to be my new term.
I like it. I'm on board with that.
All right.
201-939-4513. Let's get to it and lead off with Hugo in New Jersey. Hugo, what's going on?
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
Hello.
I guess based on reports, the scheduled release will be next week, I think. The 15th is
the NFL has not announced this officially yet, Hugo, but enough people that you trust to have good information have reported that, so that's the assumption I'm operating under, but I wouldn't guarantee it.
Yeah, Sports Business Journal actually came out a couple of days ago saying they had an internal memo from the league.
Once the NFL Network announces when their draft release special is on NFL Network, that's when I know it's official.
Exactly.
Okay. So in some ways, I think John Mara could be the MVP, at least for the early part of the season. I hope he does a good job of lobbying the league to give us a softer opening schedule. And I have a couple of reasons why. Well, one,
Hugo, real quick, the league will not reciprocate on those types of asks.
No, they will not.
If the Giants asks, don't give us a game on Yom Kippur, there's a good chance the league will help facilitate that. Now it doesn't happen every year because the Giants had to play on a Monday night on Yom Kippur a couple of years ago, which frankly the ownership was not happy about. But it happens. You can request not to play on a holiday. There are things that you can request. You can request to have 2 straight West Coast games so you can stay out there and you don't have to travel back and forth twice during the year. Those are the type of things the league will at least accept your requests on. They don't guarantee they'll fill them. But if you call them and say, yeah, can you give us easier games at the start of the year, they will not take that into consideration.
The second they sniff a competitive factor involved in your request,
correct,
that request goes right in the trash.
Well,
yes, that's correct.
I have a slightly different angle on this. It's our 100th anniversary season.
Yes.
And the league is a fan of tradition and history. So the way I think about this is, for example, if the Giants were given the AFC North and the NFC East early on in this schedule, you could end up in a situation where there are celebrations going on at the stadium that would look a little bit like fiddling while Rome burns, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly. Yeah, the old orchestra on the Titanic as the ship sinks underneath the water. I understand what you're saying.
Exactly.
I got you.
So I'm not saying John Mara should go to the league and sort of say, hey, give us a competitive advantage. I would just suggest that, one, last year you gave us a gauntlet, and two, keep in mind that this is our 100th anniversary year, and we want to keep fan interest at a maximum.
Now, Hugo, what I would say is maybe you could say something like, and I have no idea if the Giants have done this. I'm just throwing a theoretical out there. It's our 100th anniversary. We would like our first game to be at home and not a primetime game, for example. Like, you could put that type of request in, and they might say okay to that. But you can't say, can you give us a really team that could you give us the Panthers in week 1? Like, I don't think that's something that the league would necessarily be open to a suggestion on.
No.
Okay. Well, look, last year was a tough schedule. I think this year's schedule is tough. I already referenced the AFC North. They're bringing back their head coaches.
The AFC North might be the best division in football. Mm-hmm. You're right about
that. I could easily see the Giants going 0-4 against the AFC North, and I'm kind of thinking 2-4 in the NFC East, and one of the reasons why I'm saying that is because, Washington, who we have swept over the last few years, I think we're actually going to split this year, and part of the reason is I think they've done a pretty good job in the offseason, sort of in a quiet way, and Dan Quinn has a knack for how to attack the Giants when the Giants are on offense. So, I think we'll win our first matchup with Washington, but probably lose. I'm not saying probably. There's a possibility we'll lose the second matchup.
Well, Hugo, what I would say is this. All right, you want to hope you can go 3-3 in the NFC East. I think that's your goal, right? If you can get to 3-3, I'm just talking overarching goals.
He's got them losing 8 games already.
If you can get to 3-3 in the NFC East, again, I'm putting a picture together as to how you get to 9 wins. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the Giants to 9 wins.
Okay,
right?
Go ahead.
So you go 3-3 in the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
I'll even give you 1-3 against the AFC North. All right, and I'll give you 4-7.
Okay.
All right. Then I won 3-1 against the NFC South. All right, that gets me to 8-8. I'm sorry.
No, if 3 wins get you to 7.
That gets me to 7-8.
That gets you to 7.
And then you have your 2 wild card games,
Mm-hmm.
and those are against the Vikings, right? And the second game is against the Colts, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Win those 2 games, and that gets you to 9-8.
It does.
I got it. And then the other game is at Seattle, I think. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, there's a path, but I'm just saying it's kind of like a narrow path.
Yeah, and Hugo, you're right. I forgot about the Seattle game. Those 2 wins against Indy and the Vikings would get you to 9-7, and then let's say you lose at Seattle, it's a tough place to play. That would put you at 9-8. I don't think 3-3 in the NFC East, 1-3 against the AFC North, 3-1 against the NFC South, and then 2-1 against your non-divisional games, matchup games. I don't think that's unrealistic.
As you sit here today, why not?
Hey, I hope you're right. So, look, the other thing I want to talk about is the Waller situation, and I know there's been a lot of talk, will he retire, won't he retire? If you recall, months before the draft, I said the Giants needed to add a second tight end, and what I was really thinking about is a 2-way tight end. I mean, we added blockers in free agency because at that point I termed it as we have one reliable tight end on the roster, and that's Bellinger. I feel that way whether Waller, where he retires is obvious, but even if he comes back, I mean, and this is just knowing about the nature of his injury, which was what became new news during the past season. So the way I think about it is, would I rather have an additional $6 or $7 million of cap space, or have Waller come back, play a couple of games, and maybe his heart not being really into it? I mean, I'd rather just kind of see him go away, and you can't really I'm not sure you can deploy the cap space, but at least you can carry it over into next year, I think. And we added Theo Johnson. And by the way,
Hugo, you are going to need cap space during the regular season for practice squad calls up, activations on game day. So
are we that tight?
Yes.
We are.
Yep. Look, if you're looking for the economic benefits of Waller leaving the team, you make him a post-June 1st cut. You save $11.5 million this year. You take $2.5 million of dead money, and then you're going to have another $2.5 million of dead money in 25 and in 26. That would be the best economic outcome if either Waller decides to leave or you decide to cut him. That would be the way to do it.
Now, here's the question, though, and I don't know the answer to this. If he retires, do you get even more cap savings?
No, I don't think you do.
No, I don't think so because of the way the
same
contract was worked.
I don't know how that works. Like, do you have to give back part of the bonus money? I don't know how that works.
Let me see. Well, you could. I believe you can go after bonus money. You can try to recoup it. The league, many, many years ago, they had trouble with some players who had done that, and the teams were like, hey, no, we want that bonus money back, and they went into litigation.
And I'm not sure the Giants would do that, to be honest with you.
I don't know exactly where that would go either.
The Giants didn't pay that bonus money out, so would the Raiders?
They did not.
I don't know how that would work then with how that works in terms of the contract getting traded. But, yeah, look, Hugo, look. At this point, I have no idea what's going to happen with Darren Waller. That's why when we've had the discussions about the offense, I've tried not to even talk about that position much, just because we don't know. I feel like there would have been a decision by now. He kind of indicated that, around this time is when he would hope to make a decision. He's apparently staying in shape based on what he's said to reporters and stuff like that. So we'll just have to wait and see. Look, if he's healthy somehow, I think this offense could so certainly use him as a big threat over the middle. But to your point, is his heart in it? And is he going to be healthy enough to play? Correct. Yeah. I just don't know the answer to those questions.
I think the Giants medical staff is going to have a say in this too. Because,
I agree with that.
He could say whatever he wants, but then Ronnie and company are going to have to look at him and say, okay, listen, we know what you went through last year when you were here, and we need to decide for our own selves what the percentage chances are that you're going to give us a full season.
I agree with that last comment for sure. Look, in my mind, I just don't see him as a reliable option. And by the way, going forward, I want tight ends who can threaten in both the run game and the passing game.
Oh, Johnson can do that.
I'm kind of done with these, one-dimensional tight ends. So I'll leave it at that.
Everybody comes home to Papa after a while, don't they? Dual threat tight ends, baby. I love them.
Appreciate the call. Thanks, Hugo. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Cliff in New York. Cliff, you're up next.
Hey, guys. Good to be with you. Listening yesterday, I was thinking about the perfect storm from last year and talking with you guys in particular about it one time and, starting with the blocked field goal. And at the time, we were saying, how crazy was it? How often is a field goal blocked at all? When it is? How often is it recovered by the defenders? How often is it advanced? How often is it advanced for a touchdown? And to top it all off, how often do you lose your best player for half the season chasing it down? So all that was true at the time, but I got another look at it just listening yesterday. I don't remember thinking of it at the time as a special teams breakdown. And I remember reading after the game that they had spotted a flaw to take advantage of. So we know that the special teams coach at the time was highly rated, and he's still working that way. So I think what was missing was where we were as a team depth-wise, because in terms of personnel available for special teams, I know that, Paul, you were worried about losing Keon Crossan, but the way you spoke about special teams being very, cautious, seemed like you were worried about more than that. And it seemed like we just didn't. I didn't think about that much at the time. And Jonathan at some point said that the way you get the talent that you need on the special teams, so that you don't have a breakdown like that, is through the depth on the offense and the defense. So what happens in the off season? Lo and behold, we've got huge improvement in depth on the OL, and then when all of that free agent flurry was finished, I noticed that Joe Shane was keeping on going, and it sounded like the next 3 or 4 or 5 signings were all special teams kinds of guys. So putting that all together, I'm feeling very optimistic.
Well, let's just say this. You're right. When we talked about this team last summer, I thought that the special teams was a major Achilles heel that was a concern. You're absolutely correct about that, because I did not like the way that the personnel had turned over on the roster. I thought they had themselves in a very questionable situation. This year, I agree with you. I think John would also concur. You look at a lot of the guys they brought in, whether it was the draft or through free agency, and there is a clear attention being paid to what can these guys do to enhance special teams. Now, Joe Shane told Mike Eisen, the Giants senior writer from Giants.com, right at the owners' meetings, and you remember this message was relayed to us, Joe had said to him, I wish the new kickoff rule had been put into effect before the start of free agency, because we would love to have paid attention to that. Well, no matter. Joe seems to have absolutely paid attention to special teams during this offseason.
And look, I'll be honest, and you know this, Paul, and we've gone back and forth about this before, and you think special teams is more important than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying special teams is not important, but I don't think it's like a third of the game.
I get it.
But here's my but. It's much more important now than it was last year at this time. This kickoff thing is going to be a big deal, people.
Mm-hmm.
I think you are going to have. Look at it this way. I think the team that leads the league in kickoff returns for touchdowns will have at least 3.
Okay.
I think you're going to have one kickoff return for a touchdown at least per week in the NFL.
Would not surprise me.
Every week you will have one game where there's a kickoff return for a touchdown. The athletes are too good.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much space. It's going to be too hard for the special teams coaches to, shift and move their guys around because of the alignment rules, to wall some of this stuff off. I think you're going to have multiple. I said one. I think you'll probably have closer on average 2 to 3 kickoff returns for a touchdown per week. Probably closer to 2 in the National Football League
I'm
this year.
afraid early in the season that the officials will have a hard time trying to legislate it, to be honest, because of all the new rules and the subdivisions that are within the rules.
In terms of the alignment pre-snap or in terms of like blocking and holding during the play?
All of it. All of it. From the time that the ball gets kicked off, I'm concerned that with all the things that go on a kickoff as it is, and now you've got all the subdivisions to this rule, I think you're going to see a number of very... I don't want to use the word sloppy because it won't be intentional or even unintentional. It's just going to be the fact that
the teams are figuring it out.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult to figure it out. The players have to figure it out. The coaches do, and so do the officials. Remember, NFL officials are going to be new to this too.
And I love do we know what this personnel is going to look like? Like, are you going to have more offensive linemen lined up on the return team on special teams because you don't have the wind up? I think to me, this is one of the most, I can't wait to watch special teams practice now. Like, it sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I am psyched to watch kick return and kick coverage practice over the course of the summer. It's going to be fun. I just want to see who the guys that are out there, how they're aligned, how they block. Like, what are the, you can actually run, like, zone blocking plays. Like, is he running right? Is he running left? Is he running up the middle? Like, there's a million different ways you can kind of, skin this cat and figure out how they're going to return these kicks. It's going to be a ton of fun.
I don't want to spoil this for you, but if I were a coach, I would make sure that I'm running those special teams sessions during the closed practice sessions. I do not want anybody getting a look at what it is I'm going to do on this.
The problem, though, is that you're going to want to do it with pads on so you can be physical.
Yeah, I know.
And the only way you can do that is do it at open practice as the training camp. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, I know. Once the season starts, though,
but they're going to practice this a lot in the summer. They have to.
You're right. They're going to have to. You're right. But, as it is, folks, what you probably don't know is, like, during the season, we get about a 15-minute window, at practice during the week each day, and then that's it. Practice is closed. And very often, to this point, that's a special teams section.
Right.
I don't think that's going to be during the season.
I think that's a really good chance of that. I agree. I'm with you. You got anything else for us, Cliff?
Yeah, well, just on that, I was not thrilled to hear about the change. I noticed all the coaches and the front offices are embracing it, and they're all gonna do their thing. But
why do you dislike it, Cliff? Why?
I didn't think there was anything wrong with the way it was. If I was not unhappy with kickoffs going through the end zone, and at the end of the game, somebody trying to return one from the end line because they needed points, and the rest of the time there was nothing happening on the kickoff. And I'm just afraid it's going to be disruptive. And I hope it works out, but my feeling is after a year they're going to say they have to take another look at it and tweak it more than a little bit.
They've already said it's only a 1 year experiment.
Thank
and
you,
they
Cliff.
will
Appreciate the call.
revisit. They've already said it's only 1 year.
I mean,
which is fair.
The only way they're going to take it out is if there's a health issue with it, because you're going to get more returns. Returns are going to go up by probably 50%.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go up a lot, which is what the league wants. I know Cliff is an older fan, but for some of the younger fans, like, you go back, Paul, when the Raiders used to have. Remember, they had Alexander right back there as their kickoff returner. Earl Gray with the Houston Oilers back in the day. Deion Sanders when he did mostly punt, but he did some kick too. Vicek Ahema when he was with the Eagles. Like, you with David Meggett. when you had these guys, Herschel Walker when he was, after
Herschel
his running
Walker
back
was
days.
a great kickoff return guy.
You have those guys back there? Guys, it was an exciting play.
Yes.
Like, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Look, it was not uncommon that on Monday Night Football, when Howard Cosell did those halftime highlights, there'd be a kickoff return somehow in those highlights because the kickoff return provided explosive plays. Look, I understand that this is very untraditional. If you've watched any of the XFL, Cliff just called us, right?
Yes.
Cliff, if you've watched any of the XFL games, I understand why it makes you cringe a little. You're like, this isn't really a kickoff. This is like something weird. I get that. But if it saves the kickoff in the game and allows there to be some more action, why ultimately would you be against it?
What's the best part of watching the NFL? Seeing freakish athletes
Guys make plays
with the ball in their hands doing crazy stuff. Do you know what the kickoff's going to be? That.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah. Look,
I can't wait. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. I love it. Love it.
I would think, the one thing that's going to be very interesting as we go through this process, if it survives, John, and it winds up becoming the new rule for some years down the road, we just don't know.
The only way it doesn't is if there's some kind of injury health thing with it, in my opinion at least.
What is then going to happen, not only with teams that want to make sure they get guys who can do this, because you are going to have to start thinking about how you configure your roster, and guys who are really, really good at it, well, you know what happens after that, right? They start asking for more scratch.
What's your ideal, in your opinion, Paul, what do you think your ideal size is for a kick returner in the new rules?
5'11", 215?
Yeah, I was going to say 6 foot 210.
Okay.
You want a guy that is not it's not a guy that is going to kind of trudge along. You want a guy with enough breakaway speed, but you want a guy that can break a tackle too and has enough. And that's why I think Tyrone Tracy is he's the perfect size, speed guy to do kicks. Like, Wandell might be a little small for me. I want a guy with a little more beef to him. And that's why Cordero Patterson, right, has always been such a good kickoff guy. He's like 6 foot, like 215, 220 pounds.
Did you get a chance to watch?
I just looked it up. He's 6'2".
He's 6'2", Patterson, and what, 220?
Did you get a chance to watch Barkley do it at Penn State?
Yeah.
He was really, really good at it.
Correct.
Really good at it. I'm not saying that the Eagles are going to use him there because obviously with his injury history, you might want to, keep him off of the kickoff return. But, man, when Barkley was doing that for the Nittany Lions, he was dangerous and a lot of fun to watch.
He was a lot of fun. And then, who just went to the Hall of Fame as the kick and punt returner?
Devin Hester.
Yeah, you had Devin Hester, and then you had Josh Cribbs too, right? Two other guys that had that in them. Percy Harvin. You go back in the day with the Vikings, right? How about Brian Mitchell? I forgot about him. I'm looking at the list here.
Brian Mitchell, one of the all-time great returners.
With Washington and then Philadelphia.
Even
phenomenal.
Have a cup of coffee with the Giants, too.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Here's what I will say. It's a shame that guys like Hester and Mitchell and some of the other great kickoff return guys of all time, it's a shame, all right? Billy White Shoes Johnson, if you really want to go back a ways.
Gale Sayers did it too, apparently. I was not aware of that.
John.
I didn't realize he did kicks.
He was one of the top 3, top 5 all time, but again, short lifespan, because he was hurt all the time.
Bad knees.
No doubt. Here's the problem. It's going to morph what those guys did because it's now going to be a different kickoff return. So, guys, let's say somebody runs back 4 kickoff returns for a touchdown this year. Right. And people are going to say, wow, 4 kickoff returns for a touchdown in one season. This is one of the all-time spectacular performances.
Yeah, you can't go by that.
You can't go by that because now it's a totally different play.
Yeah.
Remember, hey, David Wilson for the Giants had that one spectacular season as a kickoff return guy.
It's the same way you can't go back and look at the quarterback statistics this year and say, well, he was better than Dan Fouts or whatever. It's just
exactly.
It's a different game.
It'd be a totally different play. So I hope people don't try to compare our new kickoff return people to the ones of the past who made great names for themselves.
Interesting. Cribbs and Hester were just 190 pounds each. I thought they were a little bit bigger than that. Just 190. So they were a little bit smaller. So maybe you don't have to be in that 210 range. I'll be curious to see how that works.
I think you'd like to be a little more powerful in this deal. I think.
No, I totally get where you're coming from. Folks, don't forget to go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. We have a great interview right up there right now with Chris Collins. I think I have that name right. Pearson, the assistant defensive coordinator, rather co-defensive coordinator, defensive backs coach from Kentucky. He coached Andrew Phillips there. Really good insight into Andrew as a player and a guy. Go check that out on the Giants Huddle podcast, giants.com/podcast. Just search for Giants Huddle podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And our final draft season of the year is up as well with Tony Pauline and I. We look ahead to the 2025 draft class to figure out what's coming out next year, more of a defensive class. So we talk about that. We go through each position group, talk about maybe a half dozen guys at each spot. I've been up to like 25 or 30 guys already for next year. So check that out on draft season. And again, just search for it on your favorite podcast platform. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for all of our podcasts. It really does help us out. Let's go to Scott in New Mexico. Scott, what's up?
Hi, guys. First, a comment in regards to the Knicks. I think Brunson's the MVP of the playoffs this year. I was very
Of the
fortunate.
playoffs, yes, Scott, I agree with that.
Yeah. I was very fortunate to see at Madison Square Garden to see the championship game in '69 with Willis Reed. And,
you were Game 7, huh? Wow.
In 70, you mean?
It might have been in '70, but 69 season.
Yes,
whatever it was.
yes, exactly.
And
that's cool, man. I've rarely met people who were actually in the building.
And yesterday was
I
the
was in the
anniversary
building,
today.
And Willis Reed hit his first 2 shots, and then was taken off the floor, and then Frazier and Barnett and Cassie Russell and DeBuscher and all those guys. I know the whole team because I was a big Knicks fan.
And it was pretty cool too, Scott. So in the middle of in the first quarter, I think it was either during the first time out or second time out of the game, during a commercial break, they actually they do this big Willis Reed montage on the screen. They say, it's the anniversary of the Willis Reed game, and they put a spotlight on his retired jersey in the top of the rafters.
Right. Oh, that's so cool.
And everyone gave him like a standing ovation for Willis Reed. And then, of course, Brunson does what he does. It was just very cool.
And by the way, I got to know Willis when he was head coach of the Nets for a little while. What a great man.
I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about Willis.
Classy, respectful, first class all the way. Just absolutely adored that man.
Well, people forget that Phil Jackson was on that team, and Barnett and Frazier and DeBuscher. Nobody was over 6'10" on that team. It was kind of amazing. And also for the current Knicks, I think we should give a lot of credit to Josh Hart. I think he's playing really well.
He's been phenomenal.
Yep.
And so
Heart and soul
that's really
team.
carrying them.
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay, now to my main question about the Giants. My concern, I'm a big believer in having a balanced attack on offense. I know we have a ton of receivers on the team now. I think it's 13 maybe that we have currently on the roster. I know it's all going to weed itself out at some point.
Sure.
But what I am concerned about is they only have 4 runners on the current roster. One's a rookie. 2 of them haven't really seen any action per se. And then the other one, Devin Singletary, has been a good back, but he's only had 20 touchdowns in 5 years. And, my concern is, as you get into the red zone, who are the backs you need to depend on, or are we still a back away from trying to find somebody a la Barkley who can score from, say, inside the 10-yard line? Because I just don't think that just having a great passing attack is what you need. I always believe in the balanced attack, and it controls the clock, but I don't see it on the roster right now because I don't know what Ray's going to give us or Brightwell's going to give us, and Tyrone Tracy's a rookie. He may be a good player, but he's untested at this point. So where do you think the Giants need to go, if anywhere, in regards to the running attack in the red zone? That's what I'm really concerned about. Do they have a back, or are they still going to be looking for one?
Now, good, excellent question. I'll let Paul answer, but just as a factual check real quick, they also have Joshua Corbin, Deion Jackson, and Dante Miller on their offseason roster.
Yeah.
So they actually have 7 running backs in the room, including Tyrone Tracy. So it's actually a pretty crowded room right now in terms of running backs. Paul can take the red zone part of it.
I think, when we were at the Combine and we were talking about the backs who will probably start going in the 3rd and 4th rounds, for me, that's why I talked about Estime from Notre Dame, because I wanted a power back. I thought that was the missing ingredient, like I thought there was a skyscraper missing from the wide receiver room, right? You'd want to complement what you already have. Add another ingredient. Right now, in that running backs room, and maybe, John, you'll agree, Gary Brightwell is about the only guy who I would even consider to be close to being a power back.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Singletary's a better short yardage back. I would trust him in short yardage more than I would trust Brightwell.
I agree with that. But Brightwell's got a little bit of a bigger frame.
No, 100%. Absolutely.
So from a power back perspective, he's about the only guy who nearly qualifies, and I don't even know if he's going to make the 53.
I didn't realize that Deshaun Corbin weighed 221 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Florida
State kid.
I didn't realize Corbin was that. I thought he was closer to 210.
Well, he's very diminutive.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I don't want to hold that against him, but...
And Deion Jackson, 218, by the way, just...
I kind of still was hoping that they'd get a power back at some point. And at the moment, they wound up going for Tracy, but I get it.
I think right now...
I get it.
I think right now this is a full room. I'd be surprised if we saw another running back added. I mean, you just can't get enough touches and reps for 7 guys in a room. It's too many.
And they're not going to keep more than 4.
Right. The only reason I was bringing the whole thing up is the Giants were last in run blocking last year. John Runyon's a very good pass blocker, but he's not considered a great run blocker.
Right.
And I don't know about John Michael Schmitz as far as where he's graded as a run blocker. I'm not talking about pass blocking right now. So my main concern is when you get into the red zone, who's the guy you're going to depend on? And that was my basic question. And I'll let you guys, I'll take it off the air, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you, Scott. I think you hope that your offensive line, I think Singletary is going to be your short yardage goal line back at this point. That would be my guess.
I agree with you. At the moment, I don't think you have a better choice.
And I think when Scott opened the call and said he wants this offense to be balanced, I think we have to be clear about what balanced means, right?
Yeah.
Because 50-50 run-pass would be the run-heaviest team in pro football. So it's not like a 50-50 balanced situation because then you're way too run-heavy. So what are you looking for? You're looking for 60-40. You're looking for, 57-43, 45-55. Depending on what you want your team's personality to be. In my opinion, this is going to be a heavy passing team. I think you'll see Daniel run in the red zone too. They'll do a lot of quarterbacks runs and stuff like that in that area. But I think for the most part, Paul, and now taking the red zone out of it just as an overall approach, I think this is going to be a pretty heavy passing team this year.
We've talked about how for years it was you use the run to set up the pass, and then the game morphed, and it was using the pass to set up the run. And even though that your playoff teams understand you need to run the ball when you want to and in situations, there's no doubt in my mind that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, as I've seen what they've done with this roster, especially with the offensive linemen they brought in who are better pass protectors, it seems to me that the short, quick passing game, pseudo run game to some degree, is going to be a bigger part of what the Giants do. And the conventional handoff that we have seen in years past with Saquon Barkley is going to be lessened. I agree with John on this one.
So as a reminder, folks, tomorrow's Big Blue Kickoff Live will not air until 2 o'clock. And again, that's because we have media and practice for rookie minicamp, basically going from 11:30 to 2, give or take. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure we get all that information for you. So when we come on at 2 o'clock, we'll have some stuff to say and talk about. So we want to bring you the best information. So that's why we're starting a little bit later at 2. If media goes a little bit late, we might be a few minutes late. We'll see. Because we want to make sure we hear the rookies at the podium after practice. So, again, stay tuned tomorrow at 2 o'clock for Big Blue Kickoff Live, and we'll be back at 12:30 next Monday. And don't forget, folks, Giants season tickets, giants.com/tickets. You become a member. You get benefits all year round, not just on game days. Check it out. And Giants TV is the Giants connected TV streaming app. Find it for free on any of your smart TVs, and Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, whatever it is you got. It's there. You get our shows. You get video content, highlights, all that stuff. Check it out, the Giants TV app. Download it. Android phones, Apple phones, they all got it. Go download it and check it out. It's all part of the Giants app, which you can find on Android and Apple, so make sure you check that out. And, of course, subscribe to the Giants YouTube channel where you can find the video versions of all these shows. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. We'll see you on Friday at 2 for another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live.